Hey everyone, welcome to episode 31. I trust you guys are doing well, and in this episode we're going to do some really cool stuff. I want to introduce like a leisure or a park area, and we are going to base this off a place in the UK called Byberry, which is in a region called the Cotswold. And they have this amazingly picturesque old cloth mill, and this to me was just quintessential English countryside, and I take a lot of inspiration from the Cotswolds in this episode. It's just such a beautiful part of England. So without further ado, let's fly over to where I want to install this and make a start. So the first thing I'm going to need to introduce for this build is a river. I had put one in when I had made the map, but it's quite a way away from our town, so I'm going to move it just a little bit closer. The way that I want the river to run through our cloth mill is going to be very particular, and you'll see what I mean as we sort of progress through the episode with that. So there's also a lot of work in getting the terrain to the right height, getting it flat, and sort of trying to imagine where it's going to sit, at what levels I'm going to need everything. And for all of those reasons and more, I've decided to make the river with Terra Networks. This is because it gives me far more control over the terrain than using the terrain tool. And for now, I just run it very quickly out and onto the beach. We come back and change this at the end of the episode. So the next challenge was getting the water sort of running right down our river. Because I've used Terra Networks and because I really need it quite flat, running quite level, this was a real challenge. It still doesn't look 100%, even, doing the best I can. And that is because for some reason, the game mechanics make water running on flat terrain run as quick as it does sort of coming down a mountainside, and for the life of me I can't work out why. But I'm going to say right now, I think the biggest letdown with this whole area for me was the fact that the water was moving so quickly through it, where in reality it's very still, like a pond, and it creates this very serene feel. So I was gutted that I couldn't recreate that, and I was adamant on using real water, not props, so that was out of the question. And maybe a more technical question for the asset creators out there, but is there some sort of mod that can be created where we can plop water down that just sort of sits still? Because as far as I can tell at the moment, the only option is to have the river running at sea level so that the sea floods in here and just sits still. And yeah, I don't really want to do that, but I don't know. I mean, it could be written into the game code or something, I'm not sure. But I also have to say that that is the only real complaint that I have about the area. Apart from that, I absolutely love it. So please don't be discouraged. I still think it's worth watching. So now you guys can see what I'm trying to do with this river here within the boundaries of the cloth mill we're building. I've made this sort of square bit, and I want the river to look like it's been sort of forced through very particular and built up canals in this area. There's going to be an old water mill in here that's still running, and an old restaurant that's working out of here now. And maybe these canals were built originally to direct the flow of water towards that water wheel. So that's why I've used these Terra Networks. I've got much more control over the terrain here, and I can make it straight where I need it to. So the next thing to do is install some really small walls. Now this river is following the real life counterpart, and it's very close to ground level. It's probably only about 20 or 30 centimeters below actual ground level, so that's another challenge here. I'm using these really nice stone network walls to make the sides of these canals, and we're really only going to see about the top foot of the wall. Then I can bring this old road in that was maybe in use back in the day to service the actual mill area, but now it's just going to be converted to a walking trail. And then I spend a little bit of time trying to install an old looking stone culvert or bridge where the water can flow underneath it. And you'll see me mess around with Node Controller and a few different props to try and achieve this, but in the end I use the UK style bridge by Rick 4000. It looks really bloody good and really fitting, and with a little bit of manipulation with PO it fits in pretty good. Then with the rest of the area, I just really want to make it look aged, so that means putting in lots of bush and a few reeds around where the land meets the water. Then I can come back up the road to the very start of it and start installing the first buildings, and these are going to be the cloth mill workhouses. And I've used PO again here because I'm going for a very particular look. We can see here that in real life they've got these gables facing the road, and they've also got gable ends facing a perpendicular direction. In terms of layout, we have small workhouses, 4 of them along the road, and then a main workhouse up on a hill behind it. And all of this is following that real life example from Byberry. And to finish it up, I just add in a whole lot more bush and make the whole thing look really old. So this building here is indeed going to be the main cloth mill building, and in this instance it's going to be turned into a really cool and charming old restaurant. We're going to have beautiful sweeping views of the gardens and small rivers. You'll hear the water going through the watermill as you sit and eat, and we're also going to install functioning walking tours around the entire cloth mill property. So in terms of the building's layout, it's got this big courtyard here that's been converted into a seating area. There's also another seating area that's half in the building and half out, and maybe that's so you can still go and sit outside in the gardens on a rainy day. And the little island piece you can see me working on at the moment is where we're going to have one of our walking tours, and we're going to have beautiful gardens out here that can be walked through and around. There's also this really lovely little stone bridge that connects the restaurant to the gardens out here. So as beautiful as those gardens were, I also wanted to keep them really simple, so it was very quick putting it together. It's really a case of just letting nature speak for itself. There is, however, a few things out here that I do want to add a fair amount of detail to. And I guess because this part of the mill is really my own idea, I've sort of got a vision for the area and I'd like to stick true to that. Part of that vision is the beautiful gardens that we've just made, but the other parts of that vision are things like this footbridge here. I really want some old stone here with lots of character. And this is a really good example of exactly what I want to go for in this UK part of the Europe series. Maybe in some of the other towns and cities I've built, a simple bridge like this might not be a drawing card, or it might not draw your eye. Basically, it might just mean nothing. But in this series, I really want to make a point to make these seemingly nothing things like this bridge into something. Because when I picture myself in a place like this in real life, it might be things like this old bridge that I actually go and check out, as opposed to maybe the main thing that everyone else is looking at. At least for me, it's definitely about the more unique aspects of little towns. So I guess with that said, the main thing here, or the main attraction here that's going to bring people into the area, is definitely going to be this restaurant here. And as you guys have probably noticed already, we got real pedestrian paths moving through this area with real tables that people can come and sit at. So I take a bit of time to make sure I've got doors in the right areas. I put some benches and some information signs around the place, but I try not to add anything I don't need to. I really just want to let the architecture and the age and feeling of the place sort of take over. And then flipping around to the front of the mill, or the restaurant as it would be now, I really try and keep things simple, so stairs into the front doors, there's a couple of little wee fences around, some private car parks, there's a couple of cars parked out here as well. They may be staff that are on shift at the moment, and if you look closely you might also see there's been a couple of pallets dropped off. There's some kegs on one of them and some beers on the other one. Hoorah! And then of course we add some more bush and trees in like the rest of the area, so it sort of blends in nicely with what we've built so far. So let's swing around here and move over to the next part of our build. I really want to put an old water wheel on the side of the mill here. Seeing as our seating area for our restaurant is just around the corner from here, I reckon it would create a really nice environment to sit down and enjoy the view. So I'm using this awesome water wheel from the workshop from Revi. Revi made this for me right at the very beginning of the series, episode 3, when I made the Highlands watermill. And this thing is just so good. It turns to PO really easy. He's put the middle of the asset right in the middle of the water wheel, so when I use a PO module it spins off the perfect axis. And this thing's been in the workshop for the good part of a year and hasn't even fully been rated yet, so get in there and give it a rating, guys, if you can. So now the wheel's in, I'm going to move on to the next part, and that's installing these walking tours. Now this was something I didn't even realise City Skylines had until about 3 months ago. The first time I used these walking tours was in Borgovino when I created a walking tour around an old winery, and here I'm inclined to use it again because we want walking tours around this old cloth mill. And these walking tours are really easy to install. They go in exactly the same as any other transport loop. I set points of interest around a pedestrian path that's on a loop, and that's it. Link it back up and complete the loop, and away we go. So I reckon that's really cool that we're going to have actual citizens in the city or in the town that are coming out to go on the walking tour around the clothing mill. Again, it just really adds that value to our build, and I am sure the citizens of the town don't mind getting away from the smell of fish for a couple of hours. I want to come back and do something a little bit nicer with this piece of the river that we did at the start of the episode. At the moment it's not very realistic. I pretty much just put it in so that we could build that old cloth mill. So the time has come to make this a little bit more realistic. So we're going to flatten this terrain off out to the beach, build the headlands out a little bit closer, and that's going to isolate our beach around the main fishing docks somewhat, which is not a bad thing. Instead of a golden sand beach stretching for miles up one coastline, it's going to transition very quickly into more headlands and bushy rocky areas, which I think is much more realistic. And even though I'll have plans in future to build out this area quite considerably, I still want to put in some effort to make this look a little bit better until we get to that time. So how do I do that? Well, number one, the river's got a much more natural slope now than it did at the start of the episode. I've also tried to make it look like it's following a more natural valley in the terrain, which is definitely what we'd see with a river in real life. And it's probably worth mentioning too that I'm laying this out in a way that there's a couple of builds I have in mind in future, and they require a river to be running in a certain sort of a way or have particular bends in it, and I'm trying to do that here so that when I decide to do that build it's sort of all set, ready to go. That also requires getting a couple of roads in, and you'll see that I've put those in here as well. I also add some Grey Flame's mossy rocks to create some riverbanks, and then I finish the area off with a few trees and prop bushes and things like that. So we managed to build an awesome leisure area, park and walking trails for our citizens to go and enjoy, and we also managed to base it on a real location in the UK, which I'm really pleased about. And like I mentioned earlier, it's not going to be the last time we visit the Cotswolds. In the next episode, guys, we visit another country from the UK, which is really exciting, so I hope you'll join me for that. Please let me know in the comments what your favourite part of this episode was. I love reading the comments, and give me a thumbs up if you've enjoyed the episode. But that is indeed it for episode 31, so thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you later.